So hello to all and a warm welcome to Overeaters Anonymous, a New Freedom Big Book study. My name is Rebecca and I'm a compulsive overeater. Overeaters Anonymous is a fellowship of individuals who, through shared experience, strength and hope, are recovering from compulsive overeating. We welcome everyone who wants to stop eating compulsively. There are no dues or fees for members. We are self-supporting through our own contributions, neither soliciting nor accepting outside donations. OA is not affiliated with any public or private organization, political movement, ideology, or religious doctrine. We take no position on outside issues. Our primary purpose is to abstain from compulsive overeating and compulsive food behaviors, and to carry the message of recovery to those who still suffer through the 12 steps. Yeah. At this meeting, we follow a rotating format. On the second week of the month, which is tonight, a recovered OA speaker will be speaking on the topic of their choosing for 30 minutes. There will be a follow-up Q&A segment for 15 minutes, well, for the rest of the meeting, where fellows are welcome to ask questions of our speaker, which is related to the topic in question and what they've shared. And because it will be recorded, you can send your questions and reflections to me or one of the co-hosts, and we will ask our speaker. This meeting will be recorded by audio only. You will see a recording sign at the top of your screen, which you can probably see now as you come into the meeting. The Q&A section of our meeting will also be recorded, so please post your questions in the chat function or directly to any of the hosts, and we will ask them on your behalf. Okay, so before we go over to our speaker, before we share, it's time for our 7th tradition. Although we meet electronically, we still have Zoom meeting costs to pay, and we also give contributions to OA UK EB, which is our virtual intergroup. Please make a contribution using the PayPal link that we will place into the chat, and choose friends and family because it's not a service. And newcomers, we ask that you wait to contribute until you're sure that you want to be here. Okie dokie. So, I'm just going to hand over to our wonderful speaker. I'm just going to double check. The topic of the discussion will be the courage to let God run our lives. I'm going to hand over to Andreas. I believe that you have shared the timing reminders that you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Much.
Take it away.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am Andreas T, recovered one day at a time compulsive eater. It's absolute joy and pleasure to be here with you. I just want to start by inviting God, the higher power of my understanding, our understanding, whoever, whatever that may be. God, please help us remember that nothing is going to happen today that you and I and all of us together can't handle. So yeah, I'd like to talk today about the courage to let God run our lives and what happens once we get the abstinence from the food. So for those of you that don't know me, a brief background. Life in the disease for me was hell. Usual story, things like depression, anxiety, suicidality, ADHD, autism, trauma, high sensitivity with all the big feels and some rejection sensitivity, dysphoria, low self-esteem to throw into the mix to make things more interesting. Take a breath. And there were other things as well. But life just didn't seem to work. I kept coming back to these funny ways of being and eating. And in the shadow, I would eat my shame and pain away. So typically I would gain 3 to 5 stone, that's 19 to 32 kilos or 42 to 70 pounds, once or twice a year, up, down, up, down, up, down, hideous amounts of weight gained and lost. And exercise bulimia was a way of me emptying as much as possible and trying to get my way to being good enough and loved, but it just never seemed to happen. So I want to share this photo of how I looked Not necessarily because of my body, but I'd like you to pay attention to my eyes here. I looked at this photo and I felt so much love and compassion for this Andreas. Here we go again. Another diet, another attempt at trying to be good enough. Those eyes look pretty dead and sad to me. But thankfully, there's a better way, and desperation is one of the best gifts that I've ever had. So I found myself on the 14th of July 2022 with a choice. Am I going to kill myself or not? Am I or am I not? I'd had my last binge, I was feeling painfully lonely, and God said to me, "You deserve better than this, Andreas." I didn't believe in God back then, so I wouldn't have said that it was God, but I recognise that's what it was now. I drove past this road and I saw a sign that said try praying, and I laughed. Who does that? That's silly. There was me, suicidal person. I had all the answers in life. I was confident, but God, I wasn't. So I've been in OA and abstinent since the 16th of July 2022. God gave me a 2-for-1 with the food and with the alcohol. Thank you, God. I am going to be saying God, He, higher power. If there are any newcomers here, please use whatever pronoun works for you. And if all this God stuff sounds weird or even woo-woo, I invite you to have an open mind and an open heart just to listen to people's experiences, because this big book has got a lot of recovery, and this is really what we use for that. So I want to start by saying that I loved the problem. Um, and it took me to step 4 and 5 to recognize that I really, really loved the problem. Life is too painful, but at least I'm in control. On page 8 of the big book, Bill says, "How dark it is before the dawn." I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes. But my ego feels no pride or restraint from using humiliation against me. It will keep devouring all in me that is God-centered and recovered until it claims every last bit of me. This is a disease of the food, and it's a disease in my way of living. It's progressive and it's fatal. Page 82. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. This means that I'm dangerous to others and to myself when I'm not living on spiritual terms. My recovery, therefore, is a gift I give to myself and to others. When I'm running the show, God Andreas's love languages are impatience, doubt, insatiable consumption of anything, and fantasy. It's a lot like chasing the horizon. My ego convinces me that this unattainable future will eventually save me. It means that I stay stuck and frozen in the problem. And the disease sounds a lot like, I need it now. I don't need help. I can't do it. I don't have the energy. I'm not going to make it. Lack, 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 lack. Me, 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 me. That's basically the song of the disease. And impatience is one of my favourite flavours of character defects. Oh, my friend impatience. Impatience is any time that I'm trying to run faster than God. It's the belief that I cannot make it with the resources that I currently have. Therefore, I've got to become bigger and better than I actually am, to have more than I have to succeed. Therefore, impatience is radical self-reliance, and it's complete ignorance of God's power, love, and support for us. But it's not all doom and gloom. Good news. On page 50, Bill says, in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. Okay, so I'm abstinent from compulsive eating. I've worked the steps. What's stopping me now from trusting God? Well, I see that my recovery shrinks in doubt. Page 85 says, it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and to rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for compulsive eating is a subtle foe. We are not cured of compulsive eating. What we really have is a daily reprieve, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So this means that abstinence from compulsive food behaviors is not enough to keep me abstinent. This daily reprieve only works if I work the program and keep working it. But what if my life falls apart? If I let God run my life? Well, what if I come to life instead, if I trust in God? Page 88. We compulsive eaters are undisciplined. God, they were really writing this about me. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Great. Faith without works is dead. Oh, yeah. Big words, but they mean it. In recovery, when I don't trust that God can fully run my life, when I don't let go and let God, my growth stops and I shrink right back towards living in the disease. Trusting God is shifting the gears from a life lived in brace, brace, brace to grace, grace, grace. I've got a lot more of these cheesy things to say, by the way. I can be abstinent and believe and pray to God, but remain agnostic in areas of my life. Agnostic means being without knowledge or awareness of what? Of higher power. So being agnostic in areas of our lives, therefore, is our lack of knowledge and awareness of higher power being freely available to us in every aspect of our lives at any time. But good news, on page 46 we hear, to us the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all people. Phew, a rascal like me, then. Page 58. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Ouch. And if that wasn't enough, the big book rubs salt into the wounds by adding, there are such unfortunate. Whoops. Page 53. When we become compulsive eaters, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face a proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? I choose God. Choosing higher power is the shortest route to freedom I've ever experienced. So when I trust God in all my affairs, he gives me power and emotional sobriety. And that's really important for me, the emotional sobriety aspect. Emotional sobriety is the ability to find God's power in the midst of the storm, knowing I am stood on God's solid ground, regardless of what happens in my life. So I want you to imagine that you're in a large dark room with your eyes closed. Notice that this same room is enveloped in God's love and support for you. Now walk around in this dark room where you can't see anything. Do you trust? Or do you notice any fear coming up? This, for me, is what trying to trust God can feel like. Now imagine in that dark room, God extends you a handrail to hold onto, and you can hear angels ahead of you encouraging you on. This is what working the steps in OA is like. And then living in the steps, growing spiritually to stay abstinent. The angels are your sponsor, sponsees, and wonderful OA fellows. Walking in the dark and learning to thrive is how God trains the eyes of the heart and gut to see. The eyes of the mind see in black and white, lack and fear. The eyes of the heart and gut see in colour, truth and love. We seek God's will for us so we can learn to see and trust with our heart and gut first. Out of habit, I use my mind's eye to run the show because it's easier to see with the eyes of my mind. I feel in control, right? By training the eyes of my heart to walk in faith, trust, and in God-connected truth, I get to step into fourth dimension higher power living. I choose to trust God through program. But it's not always easy. Acceptance of God's plan for us isn't weakness, it's strength. Strength to live a life of prosperity. The courage to bear life exactly as it is. The peace to appreciate abstinence. Acceptance knows nothing of staying stuck in regret, grief, and fear. This is why working the steps in OA is a compassionate gift to liberate ourselves from cycles of suffering, despair and hopelessness, to a life beyond our wildest dreams. Therefore, we reap the benefits of the fourth dimension. You know, what's it say on page 83? The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Page 52. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our idea did not work, but the God idea did. Page 98. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well, regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts God and a clean house. And boy, did I have a lot of cleaning to do with steps 4 and 5. Ah, but it felt so good afterwards. Ah, to come home to my heart and realize I wasn't the monster that I thought. So I need a life that is God-centered. But how? By trusting God and living in steps 10 to 12. Bill says on page 13, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet to meet my problems as he would have me. So we get to live a life of uncommon sense, as Bill puts it. I have nothing to fear because God is here. Told you I'm a sucker for a good rhyme and acronym. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Here, higher energy radiating everywhere, baby. Okay, I might have added the baby at the end. Um, I get to experience that no fear can survive being looked in the face with love and truth. And this really, for me, is what step 10 gives me, as I most certainly found out today. Um, the shadows shrink, really, when I've got the courage to show up for them in honesty, open-mindedness and willingness. You know, this is how this program works, and this is what I need to remind myself every day. And therefore, life becomes creative and abundant in opportunities for blessings when I'm open to God in the present moment. Because I find that God tailor fits my clothes. These fitted clothes fit and suit me better than anything I've ever tried on by self-will. And this is fourth dimension living. Choosing the heaven of reality in the present moment, right here where I stand. I make that stand within me. And the best part is I can choose this attitude and presence right now. No need to wait or travel anywhere to arrive or waste thousands on courses to try and fix myself like I did before coming to recovery. Here it is. All I need is within me now, connected to God. So I choose to live in a conscious relationship with God. I get the courage to let God run my life, but only through active partnership with God. It's a we job, not a me job. I need a God-centered life of spiritual progress on a daily basis to grow in recovery, to grow in trust and freedom, and to live free in God's will, in right-sized thinking, feeling, action, and living. God is the director. I must not write God out of the show. I bypass God anytime I ask higher power to bless my script on life instead of following higher power script. And it's so easy to do, right? Once again, impatience. Yeah, I can run the show. I'm fine now I'm abstinent. I can do this life thing. Yeah. I need God. Doesn't work. I can't do this bypass stuff. I know that my disease feels unsettled by my peace and serenity. I know this. It wants me back on a daily basis. I wish it would just hang up the phone and be done, but that's not how it works, right? But I'm also a multi-time gold medalist in Olympic forgetting. So I need God in OA every single day if I'm to live well and stay well. I need God in partnership with my sponsor, with my sponsees, OA, fellowship, and service. I need others every day. Oof, for somebody who is chronically lonely and depressed and isolated, it warms my heart to say that it thawed by working the steps and living in them. God holds me up to life, and my sponsor holds me up to God. I need to be held to account. Honesty to my sponsor is like wearing new glasses. These ones. My old ones, by the way, I scratched by using kitchen towel on them. I actually did that. Whoops. But that's the thing. I didn't realize how blurry it was seeing through my old glasses. And my sponsor helps me see life how life is and not how my ego wants me to see life. I know that, and it's, the ego's a subtle foe in this respect. The way I would describe, when I'm confident and I think that my way is the right way, it's sort of like holding up a beautiful photo of a forest whilst actually having the forest behind you. I'm looking at the photo thinking this is a real deal, but all I need to do is drop that lens of my own perception and actually see that God's vital life around me really is the heaven which I can access here by letting go of my self-will. Why? Because I find, and this is what this teaches me, the big book teaches me that addicts perish when they don't have purpose and meaning. If I've lost the plot, I'm almost certainly blagging it, fluffing my way through the day. I have no idea what God's will is for me when I'm blagging it. So this is why I need to constantly check in with God to see higher power's will for me and to check in that I'm following it. And so I need to be of service. Page 63, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Page 77, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Page 100, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. But I have to help myself first. One of my biggest practices is learning to put my oxygen mask on first. And that's where learning to be self-full is important for me. Self-full for means topping myself up and taking care of myself and my life. Being right-sized with God. I don't need to be a hero. I don't need to be a victim either. When I help people, I want to do it from a place of fullness. God didn't save me, especially in steps 4 and 5 and 8 and 9, to continue to neglect and mistreat myself. If I'm exhausted and I'm helping you, I'm suppressing my well-being. And it only seems like I'm gifting you, it's actually a rotten gift and not a blessing for either person. Because if it doesn't work for me, it most certainly doesn't work for you either. And therefore, it's not really from God. I get to treat today as a thank you to God for the gifts of recovery. I owe it to God to enjoy my life as a thank you for the gift of a recovered life. This is a precious gift. Forget about winning the lottery. This is way better. And this means being of service for the rest of my life and discovering that instead of finding myself lacking and empty, I have more than I could ever need and imagine. And in that abundance, I get to be a blessing of God's radiant love and light. What a joy. God chose an addict like me, no better or worse than any other person. What a joy. So I'll take a moment to pause and breathe and say thank you. Thank you for this phenomenal life exactly as it is, hardships included. For every hardship that I bear with trust, love and grace becomes a spiritual strengthening in me. That shows me daily that God has already had a victory over anything I could ever face in this life. And my spiritual work is to come home to that truth every day. And God points to my unlocked heart that has now become useful to show me that higher power's blessings are eternally flowing. This spiritual water that takes away my thirst and hunger that I never knew I could have. And I believed I never deserved either. But I do deserve it. And so do you too. What a joy. To know that we are all beautiful and precious and can access this higher power by choice at any time. And with it, grow in recovery from compulsive eating. To live a life of freedom beyond our wildest dreams. What a joy. So, what would today look like if we acted as if we had the courage to let God run our lives? I choose to let God run my life today because trusting God has become my full-time spiritual job, and I can't afford not to do that. A life run on self-will is a poorly written Halloween story looping on Groundhog Day. And a life seeking, trusting and following God's will is just too precious to miss out on. Trusting God is the only way that I know to allow a rich, beautiful and meaningful life to unfold. It's the only way I know. So this simple way of living, a God-centered life, is so worth it. So let's work it. Right. I will finish today by reading from the Big Book with a short quote from page 258 and 261, and then the last bit of page 266. So the story is he sold himself short, and it starts, but he found there was a higher power that had more faith in him than he had in himself. They had that certain something that seemed to glow, a peace, a serenity combined with happiness. And this is a bit which really chokes me up now. Oh, these last 18 years have been the happiest of my life. Trite though that statement may seem, 15 of those years I would not have enjoyed had I continued drinking. Doctors told me before I stopped that I had only 3 years at the outside to live. This latest part of my life has had a purpose, not in great things accomplished, but in daily living. Courage to face each day has replaced the fears and uncertainties of earlier years. Acceptance of things as they are has replaced the old impatient champing at the bit to conquer the world. I have stopped tilting at windmills and, instead, have tried to accomplish the little daily tasks, unimportant in themselves, but tasks that are an integral part of living fully. Where derision, contempt, and pity were once shown me, I now enjoy the respect of many people. Where once I had casual acquaintances, all of whom were fair weather friends, I now have a host of friends who accept me for what I am. And over my AA years, I have made many real, honest, sincere friendships that I shall always cherish. I'm rated as a modestly successful man. My stock of material goods isn't great, but I have a fortune in friendships, courage, self-assurance, and honest appraisal of my own abilities. Above all, I've gained the understanding of a gracious God who has lifted me from the alcohol scrap heap to a position of trust, where I've been able to reap the rich rewards that come from showing a little love for others and from serving them as I can. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. And thank you very much for being here today, giving yourself the gift of recovery one day at a time. And I pray and thank your higher power for their abundant and complete love for you. May all the recovery and joy of 12-step living be with you today, so that you may be the beautiful and precious gift that I believe God made you to be, just like me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your share. How wonderful. Yeah, thank you for the precious gift that you've given, your higher power has given also. Wonderful. Okay, so we're at Q&A time. So feel free to kind of filter those questions into the chat directly to myself, any of the co-hosts, host. Um, but yeah, thank you so much. I really loved how you said yeah, like a kind of possibly like me, getting blessed with the gift of recovery, and it's easy to forget that it is a real gift, and we could easily just be in the quagmire of the disease. So we're quite lucky when we get it. Okay, we have our first questions in. So, wonderful chef, can you share more about what you learned about yourself in your step 4 and 5? Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely question. How long do you want me to keep responses to?
Just as you feel, don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So it felt like I'd put my life in the washing machine, and it went from the water being clear to muddy and murky. I thought I was going to lose myself, but I actually found that the things that I lost were the shame around what happened, the guilt, and all of the things that I was looping around. I didn't realize that I was living my life on a spin cycle. So what I really grew through steps, well, in step 4, was the courage to face everything which was causing me nightmares and keeping me up at night. And what I learned from that was that there isn't a single fear or thing that I'm ashamed of or resentment that I have that can't be transformed into peace. And it was actually one of the first times in my life that I found myself being compassionate. I was savage towards myself. And this was a time for me to be compassionate when I was looking at my step 4s, going, wow, I completely understand why I would behave like that. I was a petrified person and I believed that I had nothing to hold on to. And it also helped me to be compassionate towards other people. And when I sat with my sponsor and shared all of this stuff, and instead of seeing him look disgusted at me, having love, compassion, nodding and going, same, I felt seen, heard, and felt in a way that I'd not known before. It was so spiritually nourishing. And actually, admitting all of this stuff on my knees to God as well was wonderful. All of the love which I sought arrived. So, for any of you that are procrastinating around steps 4, give yourself the gift of a lifetime. It's scary, but having the courage to do it is definitely worth it for what you get for being free. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's so true. That recognition is just like mind blowing. Here's another question for you. How do you deal with difficulties? I'm abstinent for a month now, and I find it hard to go through everything I feel.
Start with a serenity prayer and keep it simple. My fears, my fears are amplifiers. Fear, false evidence appearing real. It will tell me that I'm not going to make it. It's going to tell me that tomorrow and yesterday is more important than what's happening right here, right now. But if I'm honest and I pause action until serenity emerges, I breathe. Definitely important to breathe. What I actually see is that I'm sat down on a chair. It's very comfortable. I'm warm. I'm safe. And if I don't feel or believe that, pick up the phone. We have a wonderful collection of tools that can help you. Pick up the phone to your sponsor, to your fellows. And if you're really finding it hard, help another addict. I was brand new in program. God, I had imposter syndrome. I didn't even know what rejection sensitivity was back then. That feeling of, ooh, what will people think of me? Oh, did I say something? Oh, I'm such a bad person. But I did it anyway. And by being there for other people, by practicing to use this heart of mine, by dusting it off and being of use to others, it really helped in my recovery. But keep it simple. Keep it simple, sweetie. Kiss. You know, the serenity prayer is beautiful. And I've got it here. I've got it. I've got it here just around my neck to just to remind me every day. And it's right there on my heart. Beautiful fellow. You know who you are. Gave it to me. Um, Oh, it's simplicity. I love complicating things. I thought that if I could be clever, deep, and profound, people would love and respect me more. But actually, I don't need to earn my way there. So, 1 month of abstinence, go you. That's absolutely fantastic. Keep coming back, and you're clearly in the right place. So, what you're doing is working. Have a little bit of faith. And if you don't have it, borrow other people's and use that serenity prayer. Thank you.
Oh, lovely stuff. And yeah, dusting off the old heart. Really nice. Okay, how has your faith in your higher power evolved since coming into program? Where did you start?
Ooh, yeah, very interesting. So, as a gay man, I thought that God already had me on the banned list, um, and that what was the point? I think this is where lots of my gloominess came from. What's the point? Well, God's not going to be interested in the gay man. I'm not living perfectly, right? So I had to be willing to forget everything about my higher power. And by the way, I have to be willing on a daily basis to forget everything I think I know about my higher power. This is what I love about the set aside prayer that we use, right? Because my fears come from a place of I've already decided what the right thing is for me. And I don't know what the right thing is for me. I don't know what's going to happen in 5 seconds from now. What a relief. I can stop all this overthinking, right? So somebody got me to write a very interesting letter with loads of swear words to my higher power, blaming my higher power for everything, absolutely everything that I'd ever experienced. And then to sit, meditate, and pray and go, God, who are you? What are you? Are you a thing? Are you a person? Are you a male, female, they? What are you? A color? And my higher power revealed um, himself to me so profoundly. And I can say that the quality of love that I experienced from my higher power is way beyond anything I've known in the human realm, and it's actually helped me love other people more. Because God said to me one day, "Trust me and love other people." I was trying to do it the other way before. I was trying to trust other people and find my safety in others. I was making other people God, and I was wondering why other people felt so intimidated by this judgmental me. Nobody could meet my standards. So, what I would say to somebody on the journey to finding their higher power: be open. Be open to forgetting everything that you know. Just ask. Ask the universe. Ask your sponsor. Ask other people. And be willing to have a journey. Because my understanding of higher power changes every day, softens, it grows, it does all sorts. And that's wonderful. Because, the final thing I'm going to add here is yes, unfortunately, this disease is progressive, it gets worse. But what also is progressive is our spiritual connection and the benefits that we get. And that's the benefit of this daily reprieve. 1 foot forward in action and 1 foot forward. God's always blessing me 1 foot forward from where I am. And that's all I need to know. I don't need to know what my higher power will look like tomorrow.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your wonderful, joy filled share, Andreas. Could you give us an example of how you finally took the leap of faith and began trusting God? Was there a turning point for you where this shift happened? I know you've kind of touched on it, but
I felt so alone when I was by this fast food place. I felt so humiliated because I thought, who could love somebody that's as dark as me, that's as mangled as me? And I felt this profound sadness for myself whilst my heart was beating from all of the things I'd eaten and the things that I had just consumed. And I knew that trying to kill myself, at some point I had to make a choice. In the last minute, I'd chicken out. I'd had to make a choice. And my higher power spoke to me. Andreas, you deserve better than this. And I felt it in my heart and I didn't understand it. And this is what I love about higher power. I don't have to understand a single thing. I can quit the debating society, as I hear all of the time, right? I don't need to understand this stuff. It just works. And I still can't tell you today that it works, but I can say thank you. And that's enough.
thanks so much. Okay. Do you have a recent example of how you have had the courage to let God run your life? What does courage mean to you? How do you define courage?
Hmm. Yeah, a recent example today. I think for me, the most profound examples are the simple things. Why? Um, my life is phenomenal. I never ever thought it could be this good. And yet there are still complaints there, right? yet there's still work to be done. The things which trip me up aren't the big things, they're the small petty things because I don't notice them. They're the things which I want to brush under the carpet. So this is why things like my nightly inventory, being honest, rigorously honest, not just honest, rigorously honest, not humiliated, honest and loved is super important. And this is where ADHD comes in. I forgot the question.
That's all right. There's kind of three parts of the question. So the first you touched on already, and that was where have you allowed your higher power to give you the courage to run your life? And then second is what does courage mean to you?
Courage, cœur, heart, heartiness. Can I choose to side with my heart? My heart is sat there peacefully, doing its job. I may not have rhythm on the dance floor, but my heart certainly has rhythm in my body, right? And my heart is the best organ. And I can see one of you, you're going to be teaching me to dance, all right? You know who you are. Um, that's the wonderful thing about my heart. As an addict, I want to run faster than I'm supposed to. This is why I get myself into trouble all of the time, right? So my heart keeps the time and the rhythm. My heart isn't in a rush to go anywhere. So courage is my ability to synchronize with God's timing. And that's weird for me because my mind is clever and has the answers, right? How did that work for me? Not very well. And so that's why I don't have to do anything. I get the opportunity to keep growing, to keep exploring what this life beyond my wildest dreams, beyond what I currently know at the moment looks like by turning to my heart. And I'm going to finish by saying that courage is the knowledge. Courage is my heart already knowing that the victory's already been decided. The results are out of my hand. I don't need to know what the future looks like. All I need to do, left foot forward, right foot forward. That's it. Life becomes abundant then. What's not possible if I do that? I don't know most things about most things in life, but I don't need to. Let's find out. Left foot forward, right foot forward. That's it. And if it's none of my business, I just don't do anything about it. That's courage for me.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you, Andreas. My question to you is do you have any tips on how to bring God daily to work? I often leave higher powers will me at the door when I get to the office.
Oh yeah, God, it's a big one, isn't it? It's a big one. I used to have panic attacks, by the way, like really bad panic attacks, but before clients. So I used to be frightened of my clients, even though I was supposed to help them in my work, right? So I just felt God whisper across my heart one day, what if you prayed for all of them? What if you just prayed for them? Wonderful, wonderful thing about resentments in the big book. I can't remember the page. Somebody knows, put it in the chat. But if you feel a resentment towards somebody, pray for them, right? If you're afraid of something or somebody, pray for them. So before I connect with all of my clients now, I pray for them. God, thank you so very much. Wow, look how fortunate I am. I get to earn money doing what I love and being a loving blessing to another person. Take care of this precious person so they may have everything that they need. Thank you. Now, when I started saying that, over the days, the weeks, and the months, this fear started to shrink. I then started to feel joy because I used to waste the whole morning being afraid of work. I don't do that now. Oftentimes I don't even know which client I'm going to see on that day because I've already done the work and God's already given the victory. So if you find yourself fearful, pray for them and pray for yourself. Pray for yourself to be free of that fear. Get curious. What's coming up? For me, it's always something about protection. Because basically, my core fear comes down to I'm going to be alone and by myself, and nobody's going to be there to help me. Because that's what radical self reliance looks like, right? Who's going to love me and be there for me? Loads of people is the correct answer to that, and God. So start with prayer. And the best thing about prayer is you don't even have to believe the thing that you're praying for. It just seems to come. When we seek higher power earnestly, it comes. And if you're desperate, oof, amazing. That's fuel for the fire.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for your share, Andreas. Could you tell us a bit more about your practice of self-fullness? What can this look like for you day to day?
My beautiful, beautiful, loving child, you are so wonderful. You deserve all of the rest in the world. Look at this marvelous body that I gave you. Wow, it just works. I love you so much that I gave this beautiful gift of your body, your mind, your heart, your gut. Gave you this gift of recovery. Ah, seek my will in do's and be's, or as I call it, the dooby dooby doos. God, what is this right now? How would you have me be? Is this a be moment? Is this a do moment? And I know that whenever there's any fear, whenever there's something, I'm running too fast. And it's just seeking God's will for me. So a tool that I use is two-way prayer. I find it really powerful. God, I really don't know what rest looks like right now. I'm so restless. Please show me how I can rest. I swap hands to my dominant hand. I pray, I breathe, I thank God, and I see what God has for me. Sometimes God says, do nothing. Sometimes God says, go help somebody. Sometimes God says, listen to some Spice Girls. What can I say? God has good taste in music. But it's less about what to do. It's more about being curious. Because actually the answer may be go dance right now in the kitchen to Christmas music. Don't know how you do that, but I tried it the other day. It looked awkward. Um, or it could be sit and read, or it could be just close your eyes and say thank you. I do that sometimes. I'll just sit in bed and I'll just say thank you many, many, many times. And then I'll imagine people in the eyes of my heart and I'll just send love to them. I'll say thank you, God, for this person. Thank you. And I'll just go around the room. I'll do it with lots of you fellows. I'm looking at some of you now. But it depends. And that's where I need to practice patience and seeking God's will, not just having my to-do list of what works, right?
Oh, wonderful stuff. I reckon we've probably got time for one or two more questions. So feel free to log them to me. Yeah, beautiful responses. And I like that term, self-fullness.
I top myself up, and what overflows belongs to you, and what's inside the cup is for me. And that way I can actually be a loving blessing to you and not just pretend to love and bless others.
Mm, absolutely. Mm. Please, could you share with us your step 11 practices? I know you've
Mm.
talked about two-way prayer already.
Yeah, conscious contact. It's not just contact, it's conscious contact. So conscious means I'm aware God is in my presence right now. So I can approach God through the breath, which I often do. I just slow down, take a few deep breaths, and I feel that loving connection to my higher power. And I ask questions from my heart. Like oftentimes, God speaks to me in what if questions. That's one of the most common ways that God speaks to me. What would it look right now if you thanked this person? What would it look right now if, instead of being offended, you chose to ask that person how they are? I get these things all of the time. But yes, of course, we have our step 10s, but I have my step 11 nightly inventory. Meditation, yes, it's about closing my eyes and breathing, but meditation actually is being present wherever I am, connecting with whatever is. So I could be meditating whilst walking barefoot on the grass, taking some deep breaths in, looking at the landscape, staring around the room and just looking at what's beautiful and saying thank you to God. Where can I invite God in a daily basis? And I've got loads of things, loads of reminders. I'm playing with this right now, which has prayers on. I've got this touching my heart. Where can I have God everywhere? Can I have God in my smile? And part of my step 11 practice as well, seeking that conscious contact and growing with God, is learning. So it's reading recovery literature, it's sharing it with other people, it's having a God squad and sharing resources, discussing resources, asking how others are. Like, there are infinite ways that we can connect to higher power. And I think my favorite part of it all as well is learning to be honest and right-sized. What my nightly inventories are showing me now, because I'm doing this slightly differently. I'm working with a new wonderful sponsor. And what I'm learning is that there's nothing to be embarrassed about, because in the truth, I get to be free. I get to see what patterns come up. And what my nightly inventories show me is there's some spiritual work to be done there, because maybe I've been doing a bit of spiritual bypass, ignoring something, brushing it under the carpet. So thank God, God doesn't limit me with the ways that I can consciously connect.
So much. And yeah, last question to finish us off. You mentioned the blessings of fellows, sponsors, and sponsees. What's your advice for working with sponsees?
Don't say anything to them unless you've connected to God and your heart first. I want to be a blessing. I want to be a blessing in this world. And I want it to come from God. And if it's coming from me, it's half digested, it's probably overcomplicated, and it's probably not going to be helpful. One thing that really helps me, especially if I have the temptation to judge another person, which thankfully happens much, much less than ever before by a huge degree, I imagine them as me. And I'm like, okay, now speak to that person. Is what you're going to say going to hurt their heart? Is it honest? Because I think, one of the things that can be tempting for me sometimes is, oh, well, I'm not sure about saying that because, that could be upsetting. Is it true and honest? But pausing, breathing, step 10ing first before I connect and share something. I want it to be useful to somebody. I want to encourage somebody. And encouragement can look different from day to day. Encouragement could be telling the truth in a loving, compassionate way. Or encouragement could just be just listening to somebody, knowing that you care and you're present. That for me is huge. Because I think a big part of the disease is a temptation to believe that I'm not good enough or I'm a nuisance to other people. Well, my sponsor reminds me all of the time that I'm not, in so many different ways. And I get to do that and model that as well. So I would say to somebody, if you're looking to work with sponsees, you're going to find your own way of sponsoring, but look to have a look at the little glimmers around you. Look at the people that really inspire you in program, that have a way of connecting with their sponsees, which actually makes your heart glad. Makes your heart glad for a reason, because actually that's probably how you want to be spoken to as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Oh, lovely. And like quickly tied to that, could you speak a little bit on what you look for in a sponsor? Because you mentioned that you've recently changed sponsor, and also maybe some of the expectations you have with your sponsees.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What am I looking for in a sponsor? Somebody who loves God, higher power, whatever their higher power is, right? We don't have to have the same one. That's completely fine. Um, Somebody who loves God and somebody who loves themselves so much, or at least is willing to work and walk in that direction, that they have the courage to live this way of life thoroughly. Not as perfectionism, not as beating themselves up, but thoroughly. They want to give themselves a chance in life. This is really important to me. But really, I think it's more of an energy thing. Somebody with a really beautiful heart The reason I want to work with that is because I recognize that I too have that beautiful heart. No better, no worse for anyone else, by the way. But it's just that way of being. I don't need hard love, but I do need love. And part of love is sometimes being told directly with love and compassion where I'm falling short. I need to hear this. I will die if I don't hear this. So I'm doing new things. I wasn't weighing myself for most of my journey. I'm now weighing myself. I'll be weighing myself tomorrow and sending this to my sponsor. I need to be accountable. I need to send photos of my food. I wasn't doing that before either. I just surrendered it to God as part of how I was working. It seemed fine to me at the time, but actually I'm learning that, yeah, my food could have some improvements here and there now. I wouldn't have known that. So I like being held to account, and I love being responsible around that because it's enveloped with love. What do I expect from my sponsees? Regular step work, service position to be in the game, and to do the work, really. To do the work to the best of your ability. It's the honesty, open-mindedness, and the willingness. You know, we all come in different shapes and sizes. I'm not here to go, oh, look at you and that recurring thing, because I'm pointing the fingers right back at me. I have things which I repeat as well. So, are you willing? Are you actually ready? Because if not, you're probably wasting my time and I'm probably wasting yours. You know, somebody who's ready for recovery could actually use that time. And that might sound heartless. I don't mean it like that. I've got all the time for the outreach with people, but are you willing to work the steps? That's what I'm interested in. And are you open-minded? Because what does it say? You know, are we willing to do whatever it takes to get better? You know, what do we say? It's simple, but it's not easy. But my God, it's worth it. It's so worth it.
Oh, beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for your heart-filled share. Um, yeah, we've all loved it. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Um, our time for Q&A has come to a close. Thank you so much again, Andreas, because service, time, and energy